If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 7 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. A dirty bomb is a conventional explosive that uses radioactive material. I am predicting that 3 dirty bombs will explode in New York City, in Times Square, Penn Station, and Grand Central Station. There will then be a massive evacuation from Manhattan Island. I am predicting that these 3 dirty bombs will explode on either August 30th or September 4th. I am also predicting that a dirty bomb will explode in the port of Los Angeles on September 4th. I am predicting that Tehran, Iran, will be nuked by the US or possibly Israel on September 7th, 2025. This will obviously be in response to the dirty bombs that are predicted to explode in New York City. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26, 2029, and it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Simon's biggest hit was Bridge Over Troubled Water. God is using the metaphor of a bridge or a door to symbolize the opening of the bottomless pit to demons that is described in the book of Revelation. By the way, it's Revelation chapter 9, and 45 is the 9th triangular number. And so a bridge is equal to 45 in simple English gematria, as I was saying, and this exact 4,500.00% of a year from the release of the album containing Late in the Evening to Simon's predicted death is all part of this Revelation 9 prophecy, because 45 is the 9th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. Also, 45 is a multiple of 9, and 4 plus 5 equals 9. And 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. As from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. So Simon's biggest hit, A Bridge Over Troubled Water, which he says he didn't really write and was more of a conduit as the song flowed through him, which implies supernatural. God is using the metaphor of a bridge or a door to symbolize the opening of the bottomless pit to demons that are described in the book of Revelation chapter 9, as I just mentioned. And again, Paul Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8 and the sound of silence in heaven, which precedes the 7 trumpets, and then those 7 trumpets precede the opening of the bottomless pit. The number 4 symbolizes a door, as the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is a symbol for a door. Hebrew letters are also symbols for things. The etymological root of the word door in English is the word dalat, which is the word for the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Dalat is where we get delta also, which is where we get door. The word door is derived from the Hebrew word for the fourth letter, dalat, as I was just saying. 8/1/25, Simon's predicted date of death, will be exactly 4 times 4 months. And by the way, this is the first day of the 4 plus 4th month, but it will be exactly 4 times 4 months after Paul Simon performed at the White House for a state dinner for the Prime Minister of Japan on April 1st, 2024. God is using Japan as symbolism for a door to the demonic realm, as Japan is known for anime, which is obsessed with spiritual possession. The demons that will come from the bottomless pit through the door that is opened with a key. As I mentioned, Paul Simon is associated with musical keys, and as I mentioned in the last paragraph. Okay, and these demons that will cross over into the earthly realm will demonically possess people, as alluded to in Revelation chapter 9. God is using Japan in his signs for 3 symbolic reasons. One of them is Japan animation, anime, which is obsessed with spiritual possession. And by the way, all of the cute little characters that are nonsensical, etc., in Japanese culture, which are ubiquitous in the culture, are symbolism for demons. It's rooted in the Japanese ancient religion of animism, worshiping the animals, etc. And that's why the modern culture has this, I guess, attraction to all of these nonsensical characters, which are in truth demons. There's a heavy demonic spirit over the nation of Japan, as well as many other nations, but it's a different form of the demonic spirit. It's not like the demonic spirit over Iran or China. It's different, but it's manifested in the cutesy culture of the Japan anime, which is obsessed with illicit sex and also spiritual possession. It's all demonic. Now, Simon sang his song Graceland at the White House mansion, and Graceland is about traveling to the Graceland mansion in the 4 times 4th state. And again, Simon sang about the mansion in the 4 times 4th state exactly 4 times 4 months before his predicted death, as I say in the next sentence. Okay. Yes, Simon is predicted to die exactly 4 times 4 months after he sang for the president in the White House mansion about Graceland mansion in the 4 times 4th state. And the 4 times, and by the way, the White House mansion has 44 plus 44 plus 44 rooms, and the 44th president is predicted to return to the White House mansion as the Antichrist. That's what all of this, that's the reason for this connection. God pointed to the White House mansion 4 times with Paul Simon, 4 times 4 months before Simon's death exactly, and that's because of the 44th president returning to the mansion as the Antichrist. The day that Simon sang about the Graceland mansion, which is in the 4 times 4th state, also, don't forget. And the Graceland mansion is in the area of the country that is nicknamed Little Egypt, because the king of rock and roll's mansion is symbolic of the king of Egypt's palace in the Bible. Okay, the day that he sang about the Graceland Mansion in the Little Egypt was the fourth, and by the way, Elvis has a song named Little Egypt, was the fourth prime number of days before the path of totality of the eclipse over America passed over Little Egypt, including Cairo, Illinois. This eclipse first entered the U.S. over Eagle Pass in Texas at the border, which hinted at Paul Simon's song, El Condor Pasa. It's astounding. And El Condor Pasa was the fourth released song from the Bridge Over Troubled Water album. And again, bridge is synonymous with door in God's signs, and door is the symbolic of four. So El Condor Pasa was the fourth song. This eclipse that went over Little Egypt, that pointed to the mansion in the 4 times 4th state, first entered the U.S. over Eagle Pass. And then after the eclipse went over Eagle Pass, it passed over Simon's mansion in Wimberley, Texas, where Simon lives today. Amazing. Paul Simon is Jewish. On the day that Simon sang at the White House, the mansion in the 4 times 4th state, 4 times 4 months before his predicted death, for the Japanese prime minister, the Israeli Defense Force accidentally bombed, and Japan is symbolic of nuclear bombs, the 4th prime number of workers for World Central Kitchen. You may recall this was the big news story of the day. There was this NGO, charity group, if you will, providing food to the Gazans. The name of the organization, World Central Kitchen. It's part of this prophetic sign, is part of these signs, part of signs that are pointing to the coming food shortage, the worldwide food shortage, after the volcano in the 4 times 4th state on the 44th latitude line erupts, Yellowstone. That will put ash into the atmosphere, which will cause crop crisis, failures, and a food shortage. And anyway, that's what was pointed to here. But also, it was 7 that died, and it was 7 days after. No, it was the same day, but 7 days before the eclipse. But it was the same day that Paul Simon, who was Jewish, sang for the Japanese prime minister at the White House. But again, the 7 deaths, because 7 is the 4th prime number. And Simon is equal to bridge, which is equal to door, which is equal to 4, as I've been explaining. And again, that day is 4 times 4 months before Simon's predicted death. Okay. So yeah, on the day that Simon died, 4th prime number of people died in the prophetic sign, 4 times 4 months before Simon's predicted death. Okay, now this was on April 1st, 2024. By the way, the first day of the 4th month. And that day was 4,444% of a calendar year after the first day of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis. The Iran hostage crisis is also known as the 444-day hostage crisis, which coincided with Jimmy Carter's final 444 days in the White House mansion. Simon performed for Carter's pre-inaugural ball before he went to the mansion, the day before Carter moved into the White House mansion. And so in this way, Simon is associated with Jimmy Carter's presidency. And in the inaugural ball, Simon performed his song, American Tune, for Jimmy Carter. Carter was inaugurated in 1977. Simon performed for it. Carter's presidency began a series of 7 presidents that parallel the 7 kings prophecy in the Bible, but that's another story. And Simon's recent album, again, is 7 Psalms, and there are 7 trumpets that follow the sound of silence in heaven. And Simon has a song late in the evening known for its use of trumpets. Simon sang Graceland about the Graceland mansion in the White House mansion, which has 44 plus 44 plus 44 rooms, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. He sang about the Graceland mansion in the White House mansion on the first day of the 4th month of the year in the year 24, which is 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. It's another repetition of 44, if you will, 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And this day, the first day of the 4th month in this year, was 4,444% of a calendar year after the first day of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis. The Iran hostage crisis is also known as the 444-day hostage crisis. The first lyric, and it coincided incidentally with the final 444 days of Jimmy Carter in the White House mansion. The first lyrics, as you can see here, God uses firsts for signs. The first lyrics of the song Graceland is, quote, "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar," unquote. This is, if you will, like an incipit. An incipit is a term used for the first phrase or sentence or idea of a piece of literature or music, right? Because back in the day, a couple of centuries ago, there was no such thing as titles. Title was giving a piece a title was an invention, a new thing at some point in history, not too long ago. And so pieces were known by their first sentence. That's how pieces were referenced. It's called an incipit. Anyway, if you will, the incipit of the song Graceland is, "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar." By the way, the most famous incipit in history is, "It was a dark and stormy night." You know, you've heard that before. That's the first line of a famous piece of work. Okay, now, so the first words of the song are the Mississippi Delta. The name Mississippi is unusual in that it contains 4 instances of the letter S and 4 instances of the letter I. This is more of this number 4 theme. Okay, again, Paul Simon sang this in the mansion, the White House mansion that is 44 plus 44 plus 44 rooms on the first day of the 4th month, 4,444% of a year after the first day of the 444-day hostage crisis. And this Mississippi is also hinting at that because, again, we've got 2 instances of 4 instances of a letter in this name, Mississippi, which is highly unusual. In other words, or rather, additionally, the name Mississippi is known for this. It's known for having this repetition of 2 of its letters 4 times. What other word can you think of or name that has such a thing? I can't think of one. And so God, in other words, designed it that this state be named Mississippi from its very beginning, with its repetition of 4 different, 4 times repetition of 2 different letters, for this purpose of this prophetic sign that I'm explaining right now. That's correct. It's true what I've just said. Think about that. The name Mississippi is for the purpose of what I'm explaining right now. because everything comes together at the end. It's all in service of God's plan. And God's plan is his big picture of signs, like I'm explaining. His big picture of signs is about the big plan. And it all comes together in the end. For what purpose? For this purpose of this prediction. Why the purpose of the prediction? To prove to you the things that I am saying. To prove to you the warning. The warning of what is coming. That's the reason why the name Mississippi was named Mississippi from the very beginning. Hopefully I've made that clear. So, the name Mississippi, I just read that. So it has 4 instances of the letter S and 4 instances of the letter I. The letter S is the 19th letter, and the letter I is the 9th letter. And by the way, the number 9 is the most important number in God's prophetic signs. It's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. Now, 19 is the 4 plus 4th semi-prime number. That's more 4s for you. (19 plus 9 is equal to 7 times 4, which is the 4th prime number times 4. 7 times 4 in itself hints at the date 7-4, which is symbolic of America, which is symbolic of Simon, because Simon has a big hit named America, as well as American Tune. Simon really is symbolic of America. He is the baby boomer generation singer-songwriter, and he is a cultural folk type of singer-songwriter. He really does symbolize America. It's perfect that God uses Paul Simon for his big picture here. Wow, has he ever used Paul Simon. So anyway, we have in this Mississippi Delta first lyric of the famous song Graceland, we have the hint at the number 4, and again, Paul Simon is symbolic of 4 because of the bridge and door symbolism. Because bridge over troubled water, Simon's biggest song, is hinting at bridge, which is this metaphor God is using in his signs, the same symbol as the meaning of door. And the door is the 4th letter of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. Hebrew letters are also symbols for things, and the 4th letter is also symbolic of a door. Okay, so we also have the number 4 embedded in the letter S and 9, because they add up to something that gives us the 4th prime number times the number 4. Now, delta is the 4th letter of the Greek alphabet. The Greek delta letter, the 4th letter, its origin is in the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Dalat. The name delta, or the word delta, comes from Dalat. Incidentally, the word door comes from delta. The etymological origin of the word door is actually rooted in the Hebrew symbol for door, Dalat. Okay? Which is the 4th letter. Now, in other words, the Mississippi Delta hints at the number 4. Simon's current concert tour began at the Pro-Delta part of the Mississippi Delta in New Orleans on the date 4/4. If you're wondering what the Pro-Delta is, it's where the river meets the ocean. It's the end of the delta, the bottom part, the last part of the delta region. Paul Simon sings about the Mississippi Delta, and the very end of that delta is New Orleans. And Paul Simon began his current tour in New Orleans in the Mississippi Delta at the end of the Mississippi Delta on the date 4/4. And Delta and Mississippi hint at 4, like I just explained. Now, incidentally, the name of the tour is Quiet Celebration, which hints at sound of silence, which is why Paul Simon will die on the date 8/1, because of Revelation 8:1 and the sound of silence that was observed in heaven. Now, the origin of the word delta comes from the word dalat, like I just explained. which is the name of the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the symbol for a door. The origin of the word door comes from Dalat. This is why the number 4 is symbolic of a door. The White House mansion sits on 5 acres, and the Graceland mansion sits on the 5th semi-prime number of acres, which is 14. The semi-prime number is a number only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, and God uses semi-prime numbers in his signs. So, in the 2 mansions, the Graceland mansion that was sung about in the White House mansion, we have the number 5, because the White House mansion is on 5 acres, and the Graceland mansion is on the 5th semi-prime number of acres. The Graceland mansion is connected to New Orleans and the Pro-Delta part of the Mississippi Delta by the Interstate 55. Following the lyric, the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar, Simon describes traveling down this I-55 highway. He doesn't say it's the I-55, but it obviously is, because that's the highway that connects the Mississippi Delta to Memphis, where he is going in his song. Bridge Over Troubled Water was Simon and Garfunkel's 5th and last album. The 5th trumpet judgment is when demons rise from the bottomless pit and cross over a bridge and through the door to the earthly realm. That's why Bridge Over Troubled Water was Simon and Garfunkel's 5th and last album. It's because of the 5th trumpet and the bridge that the demons cross from the bottomless pit. These demons will demonically possess people through delta brain waves that will be facilitated by 5G frequencies. Music is frequencies. Bible prophecy says that those who will be demonically possessed will be tormented for 5 months and will seek death but will not be able to find it. All right? Which is why, by the way, there's a prophetic sign in which Paul Simon performed at a music festival at the Golden Gate Park, outside lands, which hints at the demonic realm, and during the concert spoke about his time in the 1960s when he was in San Francisco and knocked on the door to the residence of the Grateful Dead band members, as in the Grateful Dead, as in those who will be tormented for 5 months but won't be able to die, and so they're not gratefully dead. And then the member of the band came onto the stage and they performed together the first song from Simon and Garfunkel's 5th and last album. So the first song released. So anyway, what I want to elaborate on here is this delta brainwaves. This will be triggered by the 5G frequencies, which will engender, if you will, delta brainwaves within people's brains. And that will facilitate the demonic possession. I'm not an expert on the science, but there have been studies on this in, I guess, tribes in Africa, maybe South America, I forget, where they've, hooked the brains up to the EEGs, and while they've gone into trance states where they become basically possessed. And the delta brainwaves are what is the common denominator with these people that enter that state, which is interesting, given that God is also pointing to delta brainwaves as being the factor in the demonic possession. But that's why Paul Simon sang the Mississippi Delta is shining like a national guitar. Now, shining is God's playing on that with the movie The Shining, which is about paranormal and possession. the Stephen King, Jack Nicholson movie, right? And also Shelley Duvall, whom Paul Simon dated. In fact, Paul Simon broke up with Shelley Duvall at the airport, as in the portal to the demonic realm, before she left to film the movie, The Shining. So, and there's actually a photo with Paul Simon, Trump, God's trumpet, and Jack Nicholson at a boxing match. And Paul Simon's first song, I just realized this, Paul Simon's first song from the fifth album is The Boxer. Wow, wow, wow. Trump, fifth trumpet, right? Boxing, where they not only box, what do? They clobber each other's heads. This just came to me. Oh, wow. The reason for The Boxer and Paul Simon is the demonic possession of the brain, like I'm describing, through the delta brainwaves, which is the reason for the lyric, The Mississippi Delta was shining. Oh, and that's the reason for the Beatles' transformative hit, which transformed, it was the first alternative rock hit. Tomorrow, what's the name of, something Tomorrow. But the lyric that John Lennon keeps repeating, it is not dying, it is shining. That's a part of this, okay? That's in another video too. It just goes on, and God is so creative. He's the ultimate artist. And so, but that's part of this theme here of the shining, which is why the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. And it's music. Guitars produce music, which is frequencies. This is all hinting at the frequencies that will produce the shining, the demonic possession through the delta brainwaves. Wow. Again, Simon is predicted to die exactly 4 times 4 months after he sang at the White House mansion, which has 44 plus 44 plus 44 rooms, on the first day of the 4th month, 4,444% of a year after the beginning of the first day of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis. He sang about the Graceland Mansion and the Mississippi Delta. Mississippi has 4 S's and 4 I's, and Delta is the 4th letter. S equals 19, I equals 9. Simon and Garfunkel's prophetic reunion concert in Central Park was on the date 9/19. That's what's hinted at, right? Because he was singing a concert in the White House for the state dinner for the Prime Minister of Japan. And he sang Mississippi in the White House. And Mississippi hints at 9 and 19, as I've explained. Well, the prophetic concert of history, if you will, is the Simon and Garfunkel reunion concert on the date 9/19 in 1981. 81, by the way, is incidentally 9 times 9, and 8 plus 1 equals 9. The number 9 is the most important number. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment. And so that's a big reason for this date for this prophetic concert, which again involved so many of Paul Simon's signs that hint at judgment. Like I just explained in another video, or this video if you watch all of it in one going, because I'll combine them all, about the sound of silence being parallel with the judgment in the book of Amos, chapter 8. It's stunning, stunning. Well, anyway, let's move on here. So the date of this concert was exactly 188 months. By the way, these connections here have been known since late 2023. So 188, because this is a number God uses frequently in his signs to hint at H188, the word Hebrew word that means woe, exclamation mark, which is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. And the first of the three woes in the book of Revelation is the fifth trumpet judgment, which is part of the seven trumpets that follow the sound of silence in heaven in Revelation 8:1, which is why Simon will die on the date 8:1. Anyway, the date of the concert was exactly 188 months after the release of the famous Paul Simon Art Garfunkel song, Homeward Bound. Okay, this is an important song. The Homeward Bound is obviously a reference to God's faithful who are homeward bound, because this isn't their home. But also, this is a play on Paul Simon, who is homeward bound. I do believe that it is in God's plan that Paul Simon make it to heaven. I've watched him in interviews. It isn't Orthodox Christianity to say that, but what does that matter? Furthermore, Orthodox Christianity has only two categories of people for after they die, when there are in fact three. There's the category of people who had an opportunity and rejected God in this life, the incorrigible, the unrepentant, the unrighteous. There's the category of those who will pass from life to life. They will not go to Sheol. They will not go to hell. They're the ones who are in the process of being saved, because no one is saved until they get there. And then there's the third category of the middlings, the majority of people who didn't get a fair opportunity in this life, or even perhaps they lived before Christ. And they will be given a chance to repent in hell, in Sheol, in the holding place. And so they are the basically good people, but don't know Christ. No one is good, as Jesus said, but they aren't the incorrigibles. So you see what I'm saying? There's three categories, and there's ample proof of this in the Bible, where it's spoken of how Jesus will go and preach to those in hell. Peter wrote about this, for example. And so anyway, I don't know what category Paul Simon is in. He might even be in the category of passing from life to life. I'm not sure. If not, though, I'm pretty sure he will be in the second category. Perhaps he's in that category. It's not for me to say, though. Actually, everyone goes to an individual place. No one's going to the same place. It's all based on that person, right? A judgment is commensurate with that particular individual. And so where Simon goes, I'm confident he will ultimately end up with those that are with the Lord. Anyway, I say that based on his recent interviews that I've watched. I mean, he is clearly someone who believes in God, and the God of a monotheistic God. Let's put it that way. He doesn't really divulge too much, but you can tell that this man is a spiritually minded person, I guess especially at his late age. Furthermore, you get these biblical themes, and also the recent album, Seven Psalms, is about crossing over in the bridge into the afterlife. That's the theme of the album. Speaking of which, that's what I'm getting at here. I'm getting at the Seven Psalms album. So let's get back to what I was saying here. Homeward Bound is connected to the prophetic concert with exactly 188 months. The fifth trumpet is a woe. That's what 188 means. Now, the concert let's see. Paul Simon is Jewish, and the name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. Paul Simon's only number one hit as a solo artist was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. The concert, the prophetic concert in Central Park, was attended by 500,000 people, and it occurred. There's other fives with Paul Simon, by the way. The fifth album is Bridge Over Troubled Water. And it occurred exactly 500 months before the release of 7 Psalms. Okay, Paul Simon is equal to 500. The concert attracted famously 500,000 people, and it occurred exactly 500 months before the release of 7 Psalms on May 19th, 2023. That date was 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days. And again, Paul Simon is equal to bridge, which equals to door, which equals to 4, after Simon's prophetic dream that instructed him to produce the album and name it 7 Psalms. Okay, and he talks about this dream in the interviews, and those that interview him in his residence in Texas, he shows them the piece of paper that he wrote on after the dream that's currently framed on his wall. And it has a date. The date of his dream was January 15th in 2019. And what I am getting at is the most stunning thing. One of the most amazing things that I have learned that's been revealed through God's big picture of signs. There's actually important, is not the right word, purpose for this date, January 15th. The album was released, and again, the release of the album on May 19th, 2023 connects to the Homeward Bound. The theme of the album is crossing over into the afterlife. The album was released, and the album was inspired on the date 115, and the album was released exactly 115 weeks before Simon is predicted to die on August 1st. So again, if you can picture this without a diagram, I should probably have one. The album was released again on the date 115, 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days. Sorry, the album was inspired by a dream on the date 115, 4 years, 4 months, and 4 days before the release of the album, which was released exactly 115 weeks before Simon's predicted death. And obviously the date 115, you now know, hints at 115. Or actually the other way around. 115 weeks hints at the date 115. As I will explain in the Wally Amos section of this email thread, this points to the first chapter of Amos, the book of Amos, the prophet Amos, which has 15 verses. All right, the date 115 hints at Amos 1 and its 15 verses. What's with this chapter, in other words? This is the first chapter of Amos. What's with this chapter? The phrase, quote, for 3 transgressions and for 4, unquote, is repeated in this chapter. And its meaning is that it is a Hebrew idiom signifying a fullness or a completeness of sin, reaching a point where God's judgment is inevitable. It's not simply listing 4 transgressions, but rather using the 4 to emphasize that the sins have gone beyond a tolerable limit, reaching a quote-unquote tipping point. This is the most stunning revelation. Now we have it even more clear. So far in these videos and in this email thread, I've been talking about the relevance of the number 4 to Paul Simon because of bridge over troubled water, and bridge being the same symbolism as a door, and door equaling the number 4 because it being the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. But that was only half the story. This other most important thing possible, because of the number 4 here, this revelation has only come now. Only now have I been able to figure out, it's been able to be figured out, the purpose for these 4s regarding Paul Simon. It's not only about the door. It's about the book of Amos and the tipping point and the 4 symbolizing that. Because the phrase is, again, for 3 transgressions and for 4. So if you know this chapter, God's listing the 3 transgressions of Gaza, the 3 transgressions of Tyre, the 3 transgressions of the Amorites or whatever, and it says for 3 transgressions and for 4. So what does this mean? It's an idiom in Hebrew, and it means the completeness of sin reaching a tipping point, because in the Hebrew idea, in Hebrew ideas, 3 signifies completion. So the completeness of sin, and then it's followed by a 4, which makes this an idiom that's just hinting or meaning the going beyond the completeness of sin to where it's a beyond tolerable limit and a tipping point which requires unavoidable judgment and destruction. Incidentally, this 3 followed by 4, once I learned this, I figured out the reason for God using the number 34. It hints at this. That's why, for example, 2 planes struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11, when the Dow was 0.34 points above its previous close. And that's because 2 times 17, as in 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart, is equal to 34. That hit the World Trade Centers, and the chapter in the Bible that signifies judgment on the world is Isaiah chapter 34. But all of that is, the 34 in itself is because of Amos and the 3 and 4 signifying the tipping point beyond the tolerable limit, which requires judgment and destruction, as in the flood, which incidentally is why the flood began the date 2/17, the 17th day of the 2nd month, because 2 times 17 equals 34, and that's what's hinted at with the 3 and the 4 here. It just, you see how the Bible just keeps circling in on itself? It's just infinite in how it's interconnected. And it interconnects with God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or 2 that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.